right now and proceed with small and incremental steps. Next slide, please. And where do we stand now? According to a recent study of IMO, although in the period from 2008 until 2018, shipping succeeded to improve its efficiency tremendously, its net emissions of CO2 slightly increased. This is most probably due to the increase of fleet, but clearly signifies that operational and technological means alone are not enough for reaching our target, and we need something more. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. And this something more is clearly a new fuel. Selection of a new fuel is not an academic exercise and is certainly not so easy. Ships are long-life, capital-intensive assets designed and built for fuels with high energy density. When the ships that will be ordered in coming years reach the end of their service life, they will have to cope with very demanding requirements with regard to their emissions. Major conversion of a ship for installing new fuel is not easy, and we cannot really argue that ships can be replaced early, as we do with our cars. Quite clearly, there is no space for trial and error in the selection of new fuel. We have only one choice, and it better be the right one. We also need to remember that if shipping selects a fuel for its own purposes only, then we will have to bear the whole cost for the development of infrastructure. And if the fuel is shared with other sectors, it will have to be abundantly available. Next slide, please. Hydrogen is an energy vector, meaning it can be used to transfer energy from A to B. Today, it is mainly used for making ammonia, methanol, and in the refinery industry, and its production generates CO2 emissions equivalent to that of shipping. Hydrogen has become important because it's an option better than batteries to store the intermittent renewable energy in order to be used in sectors which cannot reduce their CO2 emissions in meaningful and practical ways. Hydrogen is a small molecule and will leak heavily in gas pipes, while if the sea transportation is not so evident, it will be difficult that it will become a fuel for shipping. Ammonia is a hydrogen carrier. Therefore, ammonia can be seen only in a hydrogen-based economy, and there is no evidence that any other sector, apart from shipping, is considering ammonia as future fuel. Next, please. The national strategy of Germany is a very good example for the use of hydrogen as an energy carrier in sectors which cannot absorb directly the renewable energy for reducing their stubborn CO2 emissions. It is not therefore an ordinary fuel as we commonly understand this term in shipping. Next slide, please. The cost of a new fuel depends strongly on the storage and distribution cost. Just as an example, only the US, the development of infrastructure for hydrogen sufficient to fuel only the 40% of on-road light-duty fleet amounts to $650 billion. And as we're a society built around hydrocarbons, apparently they have the most developed infrastructure. Next, please. We have several candidate fuel options with very different costs. Many of our options are hydrocarbons. Methane and diesel are abundantly available in fossil form, while methanol is produced from industrial processes. The non-hydrocarbon fuels, hydrogen and ammonia, are industrial products used today for specific purposes other than fuels. Nuclear is an ultimate solution, but is not ready for the ships of the next generation. Next slide, please. It is only methane that matches best with what has been said so far. We can start right now, make small steps, think big, and scale fast to a solution that can decarbonize shipping with minimum extra cost. Diesel and LPG are also good solutions, although issues like cost and availability can seriously limit their wide adoption. Hydrogen and ammonia require transition to new modes of economy that, as we stand today, will arrive late for serving as a solution aboard the ships of the next generation. It will also be difficult for us to compete for hydrogen with other sectors where decarbonization is extremely difficult and which will apparently absorb hydrogen on a highly preferential basis. Even more, if we decide to wait until hydrogen or ammonia will be widely available for deep-sea shipping, then this delay will mandate a bigger effort, equivalent to a much faster adoption of new fuels and high rates of fleet replacement, conditions that are far from being guaranteed. Next slide, please. We think to burn ammonia, but ammonia cannot be burned easily. We can facilitate its combustion with pilot fuel, which do not emit CO2, and also have its own storage tank on board. But then, why to prefer ammonia of this pilot fuel? It is to be verified whether the engine efficiency running on ammonia will be as high as with engines running today on liquid fuel and methane. Engine makers will start their tests next year. Next slide, please. Combustion of ammonia does not produce CO2, but it produces nitrous oxide, also known as laughing gas. It has a lifespan of more than 100 years, and it is a tremendously strong greenhouse gas agent, much stronger than methane, especially in the 100 years horizon. Combustion of ammonia produces also lots of NOx, and if these are treated in SCR systems, then laughing gas can be produced from an additional path as well. Therefore, unless engine makers conclude their tests and confirm so, ammonia is not to be considered as a fuel that can decarbonize shipping. Next, please. Studies suggest that even if emissions of laughing gas are minimized, it is very possible to have emissions of unburned ammonia, which is a highly toxic substance with strong smell. Ammonia slip increases when the exhaust gas temperature is reduced, and as in modern engines with ultra-long stroke, this temperature is quite low, the chances for ammonia slip are quite high. Possibly, apart from catalysts for NOx, we may need additional catalysts for ammonia, a serious complication with added costs. Next, please. It is really worth to expand our view outside shipping, actually to power sector, which has huge CO2 emissions. Electric power is mainly produced from coal-burning plants. These plants will continue to operate for many years more, and it is extremely unlikely that they will stop operating in order to save the planet. This would practically mean the elimination of coal and gas-fired power stations. We all understand that this is not going to happen, especially in areas that develop very fast, such as in Asia. What we are most probably going to see instead is carbon capture from these plants. Next, please. The carbon capture can be synthesized to produce carbon-neutral hydrocarbons, which will not require additional infrastructure. High-carbon fuels will inevitably come at higher cost. The easiest to make is methanol, but has very low energy density and is corrosive. On energy basis, the cost of synthetic methane is equal to that of methanol. Studies suggest that the cost of green ammonia can be up to 3 times more than the synthesis of methane, always on the basis of energy content. Please bear in mind that no matter how difficult it sounds, in reality, the target of 2050 can be met with a fuel mix of 45% fossil and 55% synthetic or biomethane, without any speed reduction. It is important to stress that society has to speed up the production of such fuels in order for us to reach our target timely. Next slide, please. It seems that the long list of options we have for the decarbonization does not make the decision easier, but only adds confusion. Soon, time will come that the global fleet will enter a phase of progressive replacement, and then it will not be only the fuel and shipbuilding cost that will matter. The cost of emissions will matter a lot, and this is very important. When ordering new ships, owners will clearly select the option that is currently available and can take us to the target with minimum cost. The ship owners can afford to pay more, provided it is the same for everyone. Therefore, there is little chance that deep sea shipping will adopt several fuels. Quite clearly, everything is ready for action, and at RINA, we are ready to support you. Next, please. RINA has classed the first ever built LNG-fueled cruise ship, the Ida and Carnival projects at Meyer, which required safety to the maximum possible content. Next. RINA is also involved in several other projects with LNG as fuel, and all of them being highly demanding and complex in nature. Next slide, please. While lots of experience has been gained from FSRU terminals all over the world, therefore RINA can easily undertake and will be glad to support owners in their path towards decarbonization. Next, please. This ends my presentation. Hope you found it interesting. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Andoni, for the very nice presentation, informative as well. Our next speaker would be Mr. Emmanuel Vergetis. Mr. Vergetis is a naval architect and mechanical engineer, graduated from National Technical University of Athens. He also works for his PhD, and he's a South Europe senior consultant for Lloyd's Register of Shipping. His presentation will be Shipping Energy Transition, Turning Ambition to Reality. 10 minutes, Mr. Vergetis. Thank you. Κύριε Βεργέτη, Mr. Vergetis, we cannot hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, now you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. Shall I see my presentation, please? Okay, thank you all. So I will start directly. I'm not going to let us go to the first slide, please. Okay, I'm not going to repeat the IMO initial strategy. You are all aware. The ambitions both from IMO and EU for climate neutral by 2050 are both extremely challenging. The objective is at the heart of the European Green Deal and in line with the EU commitment to global climate action under the Paris Agreement. It is Europe's man on the moon moment, as the President of the Commission said, and this journey also includes shipping. We have many candidate fuels, as you can see, and we are currently exploring various solutions that many of the previous panels have already discussed upon. We are looking for a fuel that it is zero carbon neutral at the point of use and down the supply chain. It is sustainably sourced from renewable energy. It has the lowest production energy intensity and the lowest cost, using the existing infrastructure and with worldwide availability, high volumetric energy density, and of course, it is safe to be used on board. I regret to say that this fuel simply does not exist for the moment. The maritime transport is one of the many sectors of the economy that will need to rely on renewable energy in order to decarbonize. It is important to consider how the fuel prices may evolve under the influence of the wider energy system and understand the role of the international shipping that has to play in this system and the ability it has to influence or maybe not to influence the demands of new fuel. A key milestone will be to enable the transition is the formation of alliances between fuel producers, equipment manufacturers, and associated technology providers. And this is expected to begin probably by focusing on specific ship type markets and geographical regions where these will settle for decarbon fuels to compete with the conventional fuels. This would redirect their attention in the near future towards their respective solution as the best and most viable one. So together with other sectors, shipping will add additional stress on the renewable electricity production and the power sector itself, which is yet to be fully decarbonized. It is essential, therefore, that we take into account also this impact and prioritize based on the energy demand. As an example, in order to replace the current ships with green methanol or green ammonia, an approximate of 5,500 terawatt hours of energy are needed, which is an approximate around of 20% of the current global power generation. Let's go to the next slide, please. So the question we are increasingly asked is, how are we going to achieve this transition in practice? To deliver this vision, we need to define the optimum zero carbon options through an assessment of different parameters: the investment readiness, the technology readiness, and the community readiness, which actually includes the social impacts and the understanding of the other sectors, as we said before. Let's move, please. Thank you. Our assessment was carried out against the 82K bulk carrier using low sulfur heavy fuel oil. We concluded that fuel cost and OPEX is a significant proportion of the overall total cost of operation. There is not one option that it is the most economically viable from today until 2050. Hydrogen, as discussed, has a high capital cost of storage and a loss of cargo carrying capacity, which impacts revenue. And a carbon price is most probably essential to close the gap with the fossil-based fuels. And actually, the results also suggest that when prices of zero carbon fuels are high, higher carbon prices needed to make the zero-emission vessels more competitive. The additional price to build up a ship with new fuel tanks and modified engines, it is high, but although a small proportion compared to the element of the total cost of operation. Let's move, please. In a detailed sensitivity analysis for various pricing scenarios that I'm not going to elaborate a lot, between now and 2030, the biofuels look more competitive than fuels produced from natural gas in the short term, but however, over time, they will probably lose that competitive advantage. In 2020, fuels derived from natural gas are the next lowest total cost of operation after the biofuels, and primarily ammonia produced from natural gas. Over time, the production and supply would transition to the renewable energy. Please, let's go to the next slide. In the chart, we can see the cargo carrying capacity impact of the various fuels considered. I'm not going to elaborate as we don't have a lot of time, only to say that a tailored investigation is recommended for each size and ship type because of the different technical and operational specifications that may lead to different conclusions. In the next slide, going to technology readiness, regardless of which zero carbon fuels emerge as favored from an economic perspective, from an on-board technology perspective, the zero emission vessels are likely to be technologically possible in the next 2 to 3 years. However, to be confident about any investment, we also require confidence about the supply chain, both in the availability of the quantities and the land-based infrastructure in place. The main technical barrier for new fuels as ammonia and hydrogen is the storage and the bunkering infrastructure, but the bulk of the technology challenge is in the land infrastructure and in the energy sector. So in the next slide, there are many barriers and elements that need to be removed. This is a work that needs to be done in collaboration with many stakeholders. On the left, you can see some of these developments that are needed that are quite a few. And as I said, they need a lot of collaboration between the parties and the class societies to go further. In the next slide, and the community readiness, it's also an important driver of change. So the two aspects within community readiness is involving in the sectors. We focus on dioxide emissions because this is the dominant greenhouse gas in the existing processes. However, there are other gases that may be significant, such as the methane and the nitrous oxide. And the impacts of this also needs to be considered as well when we take decisions. Going on, in how the other sectors decarbonize may also affect on the selection on a resilient transition pathway for the shipping sector. As we discussed earlier, it is not only the shipping sector that it is moving to lower and zero carbon fuels, and we shall be competing with the aviation and the other transportation methods. However, this might also mean that the cost of development and the infrastructure can be shared, and it is important to keep an eye on what is going on. As an example, the cost of ammonia and the methanol, which are currently only used as industrial commodities. In the case of ammonia and methanol, we can work with other associations and potential fuel producers to show demand, particularly for the industrial commodities as a transport fuel, leverage the existing supply chain to identify geographically best suited areas for early adoption and type of vessels, and probably also work with the regulators to influence the policy and to create the right conditions. With respect to our role, in the next slide, in Lloyd's Register as a classification society, our role, of course, is the most important thing is to ensure the safety and the reliability of new technologies, and this is where we focus, and also to model future scenarios, develop the right regulatory drivers, and provide thought leadership and collaboration, which is actually what we have been doing now. In the next slide, that in order to support, in order to support the industry, we have just launched a dedicated center of excellence, the Maritime Decarbonization Hub, which is a joint initiative between the Lloyd's Register Group and the Foundation that brings together thought leaders, and also a steering group of external stakeholders, which is in place to ensure that the hub focuses on the real challenges that matter to the industry. So thank you for the time, and this was my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vergetis, for your informative presentation. Our next and last speaker will be Mr. Basil Galanomatis. He's a naval architect that graduated from National Technical University of Athens. He is the executive director of Ocean King New Ship Sales Incorporated, and he will talk to us about green technology's impact on vessels design and cost. The floor is yours, Mr. Galanomatis, 15 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Giantsikis. I'd like also to thank the organizers for giving us the opportunity to make this presentation, which I hope to find it interesting. The first slide, please. Green technology's impact on vessel design and cost. The title of the topic is very broad and very ambitious to be covered in 15 minutes. For this reason, the slides are rather dense in text and figures, and when you get the slides in PDF format, you can peruse them at your convenience if you find them interesting. Next slide, please. What is the shipping market today? The current market prospects are unforeseeable due to world economy instability, plethora of new regulations, market-based measures proposed by various organizations and coalitions, so for example, ETS, EU Emission Trading System proposed for shipping, also a levy of $2 per ton for purchased oil for IMRF, International Maritime Research Fund, and also a very interesting, notable proposal by Trafigura recently submitted to IMO for a $250 to 300 levy per ton of CO2 equivalent emission. Huge gap between these two proposals, of course. Moreover, there is a puzzling scheme on alternative marine fuels and methods for clean energy production. For the production of the required quantities of green marine fuels, according to DNV recent study, a $4.5 trillion investments is required, compared with the COVID-19 cost, which is, according to OECD estimation, $7 trillion. Next slide, please. Let's see some interesting indicators illustrating the prospects of the very near future. Presently, the global order book is the lowest in the last 30 years, 77% compared to over 50% in 2008. World seaborne trade estimated growth for 2021 is 5.1%, whilst the world fleet estimated growth for the same period is just 1.7%. Therefore, the heavy pressure on older technology ships and the anticipated tonnage demand for certain type and size of ships is expected to create the need of renewal of fleet by ordering new technology ships within the next couple of years. Of course, the ships to be built in 2030 onwards, we may enter in an endless debate on the technologies to be used at that time. However, how should we reply to the question about proper specifications for ships to be ordered today or within the next couple of years? Next slide, please. Let's now see various factors influencing the design and building cost of ships. EEDI regulations have a major impact on ship design development. Phase 2 runs from the beginning of 2020, and Phase 3 is to be implemented from the year 2025 onwards. Next slide, please. Currently, the new designs proposed from shipbuilders already meet EEDI Phase 2. However, most of owners strongly prefer Phase 3 for their new buildings. In this respect, a number of new designs developed can meet already EEDI-3 by improving hull lines and applying some energy-saving devices, like the designs illustrated in this slide. In these cases, however, special attention should be paid on MCR operating point to meet minimum power required to cope with adverse weather conditions. However, in order to jump from EEDI-2 to EEDI-3 without compromise, we have to consider additional means such as self-generator, wind assisted propulsion, air lubrication, etc. Next slide, please. Alternative fuels is another factor which influences the design cost of the ship construction. Among the many alternatives, we shall focus on the LNG and ammonia, which will be analyzed in the next slides. LNG is considered the bridge fuel in the course of the next decades towards to decarbonization with mature technology and a rather adequate supply chain. On the other hand, ammonia, and always we mean green ammonia, has the prospects to become the dominant fuel within the 2030 decade. Next slide, please. With regards to LNG dual fuel ships, the major factors influencing their design and building cost are the type, the location, and the size of LNG fuel tanks. The pros and cons of LNG fuel tanks types are illustrated in this table. For ships with size from VLCC and below, C-type tanks are preferable. Membrane-type tanks are suitable for bigger ships, as VLOC, mega containers, etc. Next slide, please. There are various options for the location of LNG fuel tanks, depending on their types. As illustrated in these images on the slide, C-type tanks can be located either on main deck or below accommodation or aft of accommodation, whilst the membrane tanks are positioned only below the deck, usually in cargo space area. Next slide, please. In this slide, we'll see the impact of the size of LNG tank on the calculation of EEDI. The maximum EEDI reduction is granted when LNG is the primary fuel. The left table in this slide is an example based on an IMO guidelines appendix. As you can see, in case 2, where the LNG is the primary fuel, the EEDI jumps from phase 1 to phase 3. Contrary, in case 3, where LNG is not the primary fuel, the EEDI remains in phase 1. The right image in this slide is an example showing how the proper selection of the LNG fuel tank size may push EEDI reduction rate even over 40%. Next slide, please. Let's now examine vessel size and specification impact on LNG system cost. In this table, you can see that the LNG dual fuel system CapEx as a percentage on the conventional ship price goes down from 28% on an MR-sized tanker to 18% on a VLCC tanker. Therefore, the bigger the size, the more meaningful the investment. Moreover, the specification may have dramatic influence in CapEx level. As an example, the CapEx for VLCC with the high-pressure main engine and the dual-fuel diesel generators and dual-fuel auxiliary boilers and very big LNG storage tanks may climb well above US $20 million. At the same time, the same ship, its CapEx with the low-pressure main engine, non-dual-fuel diesel generator, non-dual-fuel auxiliary boilers, and reasonable-sized LNG tanks, the so-called simplified dual-fuel version ship, may dive below 13 million. Of course, other factors should be considered as well, such as fuel consumption, methane slip rate, etc. Next slide, please. In this slide, we shall see the major challenges of ammonia as a marine fuel, such as the development of regulations covering the risk due to its toxicity, still under development, not finished. Pilot fuel need, risk of ammonia slip and NOx emissions, high storage volume, about 3 times more than oil. Also, the price of green ammonia is about 4 times the price of LNG. The main particulars at GA plan these slides refers to a proposal design, approval in principle on progress, for an ammonia fuel Capesize bulk carrier. The first estimations from shipbuilders is that her building cost is comparable to LNG fuel Capesize bulk carriers. An approximation is in the region of US $65 million and maybe less. Next slide, please. Let's now see what is available today concerning the green technology. There are many energy-saving technologies and systems. However, we shall focus on a few of them, the most matured and common ones. The aft ducts, nozzles, fins, and other propeller systems, as illustrated in this slide, are solutions with low capex and short payback period. Well-matured technologies can be applied in existing designs, but we get better results when incorporated in the initial stage of design development. All of them are IMO category A and contribute, of course, to EEDI reduction. Next slide, please. We have now to consider another technology with assisted propulsion, which is a solution with moderate capex and medium-term payback period, whilst it is reduced the EEDI because it's considered IMO category B2. In the following examples, the rotor sails installation on US Ultramax or Kamsarmax bulk carriers as per top image. We have an indicative capex US $1.5 to 2.5 million, a fuel saving 8 to 23% depending on speed, loading condition, and trade, IMO global trade or selected routes. The estimated EEDI reduction is 5 to 10%. As notable ongoing projects for the same technology, we mention DSIC VLCC hull number 9900 with combined air lubrication and wind assisted propulsion as per bottom image, as well as the amazing Wallenius project of Ocean Bird, claiming 90% greenhouse gas reduction. Really amazing. Next slide, please. Air lubrication system is another solution with moderate capex and medium-term payback period. The satisfactory performance of installed systems encourages further application. Next slide, please. Furthermore, air lubrication reduces value of EEDI as it is category B1. Let's see some facts related to vessel performance having air lubrication systems tested on them. On cruise ships, the achieved net performance is 5 to 6%, and on LNG carrier, 6 to 7%. For VLCC, the estimated performance can be 10 to 11% on ballast conditions and 3 to 4% on fully laden conditions, as per bottom graph. Next slide, please. Here we can see an example for an Aframax tanker with basic standard specifications. Say new building price US $42 million. Let's talk through figures. In this table, we can see that the capex for applying various matured energy-saving technologies ranges from 2.5% to 7% of vessel's basic price, which is always an investment of worth. On the other hand, the LNG dual fuel option is really a high capex investment, about 25%. Therefore, it needs a detailed feasibility study to justify this investment. Next slide. we are concluding our presentation because from above analysis, we may conclude following. A demand of new tonnage is possible to be appeared in the near future due to following reasons. Anticipated normalization of world economy, seaborne trade growth, very low order book, negligible fleet growth for several type and size of ships, anticipated market imposed measures, demand for greener tonnage, and we think that due to above reasons, the ship owners cannot wait for various technologies under study and alternative fuels to be matured, when the market would dictate to promptly order ships with adopted mature green technologies. In such complicated market environment with novel technological and regulatory challenges, the decision-making on the selection of the most efficient solution from technical and economical point of view, in combination with the best available commercial opportunities, is a really very demanding task. During this challenging process, ship owners may find valuable support from shipbuilders, research institutions, classification societies, technical consultants, and ship new building contracting experts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Galanomatis, for the thoughtful presentation. We have now concluded session 2. We will go to questions and answers session. Mr. Zachariadis, because of a prior engagement, had to leave the panel, but Mr. Kourkoundis is in right now. So we are going to make some questions and answers. I just want to sum up a few things that I heard from your presentations. And these things are the following. First of all, definitely, as Mr. Galanomatis said, we are going to need ships in the near future, but how can an owner order ships if he doesn't know what the fuels will be, let's say, in 15 years' time, let's say in 2030. If he places the order in 2022, 2023, he's going to take over the ships in 2025. And the ships will be, let's say, operating in 15 years' time, so past 2030. What will be, how can an owner place an order like that? The other thing that I want to mention is that the new fuels should be cost-effective, they should be widely available, they should be scalable, and they should have a high energy density. And we don't have a fuel that has all these, let's say, qualities right now. The only thing we can see as a potential intermediate fuel is LNG. So my question to the whole panel is, do you think that the carbon tax to the conventional bunker fuels might be necessary in order for alternative fuels to be available and cost effective? This is question number one. The second question I have is whether the politicians and the public would accept carbon capture and storage. Will they consider such a solution, or they will say that, you know, these cunning people of shipping, they're trying to get away from regulations? That question number two. And the third question is, do you think that the new fuels that will be brought to shipping will be decided by other people than shipping people? It will be decided, let's say, by politicians or by oil majors or by, let's say, engine makers. These are the three questions. If somebody from the panel wants to reply, I would be obliged. Thank you. Mr. Kokarakis.
Thank you, Harry. All of your questions are very interesting. I believe by carbon tax, you also mean the levy on the fuel, right?
Correct.
Okay. Yes, I believe that it is necessary to have the funds to propel forward research on alternative fuels, because we hear a lot of comments about ammonia, about hydrogen, about all kinds of propulsion modes and alternative fuels. And eventually we have no advancement of the technology. So I believe that it is necessary to have an incentive in order to proceed. And of course, research needs money, and money can be obtained with small sacrifice. So yes, it is necessary. On the other hand, the carbon capture that you mentioned is a very promising technique. There are developments. A few years ago, it was not very feasible financially, not feasible on board a vessel. This has changed. We have continuous development of new technologies, like, for example, the advanced cryogenic carbon capture in the United Kingdom, which captures the CO2 with sublimation on a moving bed of balls, and that's 50% reduction in the cost. Selling the captured CO2 will actually reduce the cost of the procedure, and it can be done on board the vessel, and the technology is actually proceeding. If you look at your cell phones, remember what they were a few years back. Not very far away. Now, depend on regarding who will decide about the fuels. Inevitably, we are going to have some influences because of the inevitable interaction of shipping with other sectors. If, for example, we have aviation going to biofuels, that means the price will go up, and we are going to have competition. I talked about ammonia. There is direct competition with fertilizing industry. So there must be synergistic effort with other sectors of the industry. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anybody else from the panel wants to add something? Yes, Adoni.
The questions are really very nice and very much to the point. Allow me to start from the reverse order. I think that so far shipping has been running on a fuel that is common to all applications on Earth. Fuel, oil, as we say commonly. I don't want to say that because we did this in the past, we have to repeat this in the future. But imagine a case that shipping decides alone to have a fuel. Who will produce it? Only for shipping. The whole cost goes on us. And is there really a fuel with such magical properties that only shipping can foresee and go there alone? I think it makes more sense to think that we all seek for solutions. We all understand more or less the same things. We are not the only smart people on Earth. And there will be a fuel of, let's say, common adoption. Maybe not every sector its own fuel, but a share of fuels between various sectors, depending on the application. And the carbon capture is a technology which is really emerging very fast. It is something that, for example, International Energy Association is considering as a very strong potential source of eliminating or reducing our problem, because in fact, if we really want to get to our target of limiting the temperature rise, we don't only have to be carbon zero, we have to be carbon negative. Otherwise, the target will never be met. And the only way to do this is with carbon capture. And of course, the carbon levy is something that will certainly incentivize the adoption of measures.
Thank you, Adoni. Yes, Mr. Agilas.
So to add to the previous speakers, I think the carbon tax or any sort of incentives would take us away from the chicken and egg situation. and this is the most important thing. We should learn from history how long it took for LNG to start being applied, how long it stayed in this chicken and egg situation, and we should avoid to do this for future fuels, whatever these are, or future technologies. And the only way to do this is with incentivizing it. And carbon tax would be let's say, a good incentive or a good push in this direction. As far as carbon capture goes, and what you asked about how politicians would think about that, and I mean, it would definitely require quite very specific regulations in using carbon capture in shipping, and ways that we can track really how this carbon is captured and where is it used, where is it either stored or utilized, to create this, let's say, trust, also from the public image perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Akilas. Anybody else from the speakers wants to add something? Yes, Mr. Plevrakis.
I wish I had raised my hand a bit earlier, because I agree with Mr. Akilas in many things that he has said. Just to complement what the other speakers were saying, and I was making notes. Carbon tax, it is, or any incentive like that is more or less necessary so that we see how it can incentivize the adoption of new technologies, new fuels. How can you incentivize the first movers towards that field of new applications? Now, how is that going to be implemented? It's going to be a carbon tax? Is it going to be any other market-based measure? This is a big question mark. How is it going to be implemented, and how can it actually create a level playing field? That is something that needs to be clarified, and that I link also to the second question about the carbon capture and storage. How do we incorporate from a regulatory perspective? How do we address it from the regulation point of view? How do we implement this technology? How we track it? How will this be actually incorporated in our regulation, so that again we get clarity in the industry? That's the thing that I think at this point in time is missing. This is an inhibitor of decisions, and to make also the link to my initial comment in the introduction of our discussion. We see an emerging landscape both on the regulatory side and both also on the market side, to also reflect the elements of your third question, whether new fuels will be decided by other stakeholders. If I am phrasing it correctly, Mr. Yadikis, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the essence of your question,
correct,
right? Now, we see, as well as the market landscape being emerging in a new form, new things are being developed on the regulatory side. We see also on the market side, and this also creates a framework of either challenges or opportunities, incentives or not. This is why I think that a lot of voices are being risen at this point, saying that we need a bit more clarity to identify how we do our decision making from now on. Also to echo what you said in the beginning of this Q&A session.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Plevrakis.
Haris, I think now
Yes,
it is...
you have a question from your
We are already, because of these technical problems and some delays in the presentation, we are already out of schedule. So I think it is time to thank our panelists, to go on having this 10 minutes break, actually fill up your coffee cups, and let's be back for the third, for the last session of this conference.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, all of you.
Thank you very much.
So for 10 minutes, and then we will be back here for the next panel.
Thank you.
ABS is a leading global provider of classification and technical advisory services to the marine and offshore industries. ABS is committed to setting standards for safety and excellence in design and construction. Focused on safe and practical application of advanced technologies and digital solutions, ABS with industry and clients works together to develop accurate and cost-effective compliance, optimized performance and operational efficiency for marine and offshore assets. We have developed an unparalleled global network of sustainability expertise with centers of excellence located in key maritime cities around the world: Athens, Houston, Copenhagen, and Singapore. ABS is partnering with leading industry players in a range of joint initiatives designed to drive forward key areas of research, such as vessel design, future fuels, digital technologies, and decarbonization pathways.
The COVID-19 pandemic is eliciting changes in the pace of shipping industry. The take-up of digital technologies is accelerating, while the journey to a decarbonized 2050 remains uncertain. Greek shipping, as always, plays a pivotal role moving the industry forward, and we, at Lloyd's Register, remain committed to our Greek partners, understanding their needs and offering our experienced hand that will help them to navigate the changing landscape safely and sustainably.
We are a company of maritime experts, established in 1977, driven by knowledge, resources, and passion. We deliver technical excellence and environmental protection to the maritime industry. With over 40 years' experience and a workforce of highly trained and experienced technicians, commercial and operational experts, we look into the future. Innovation merged with experience is what makes the difference. Finding real-world solutions to everyday challenges. We are an old company with the youngest ideas. We are Maritech.
Ocean King is one of the leading technical and commercial marine groups in Greece, established 31 years ago in 1989 in Piraeus, Greece. The last few years, shipping is undergoing very many challenges with international regulations for the environment, safety, fuel, and so on. Ocean King has adapted its operations always to follow the trends of the market and the needs, and we are very much aware of the environmental footprint of all our technologies that we are promoting. The COVID pandemic has shown us that we have to do things differently, and shipping is not an exception if we want to contribute as an industry to the environmental sustainability. Our company, which combines technical talent and cooperates with the best companies in the world, we are committed with our values for the environment to...
Hello again. Good afternoon. So we're going to start the third and last session. So we left the best for the end. This panel will discuss about energy efficiency, and I will invite the moderator Christos Hadjigeorgiou to present the panel and to start this interesting discussion. Christos, your panel is yours.
Okay.
The panel is yours.
Good evening, good afternoon, everybody. It's a bit late, but it's never too late. So this industry, our industry, is being faced with a decarbonization challenge, and there is no clear path on how to achieve this goal. And basically, since the technology is not there yet. And the reality is that we're sailing in uncharted waters and the sea is rough. I think that reality and logic calls for either a gradual or rapid reduction of carbon emissions, which need to be measured and evaluated. We also have the response of the regulatory authorities in the form of IMO short-term measures, addressing primarily the issue of existing vessels against the background of alternative fuels and powering options for ships. This keyword of efficiency must be seen against this background, and we have three distinguished speakers, Mr. Stamatis Bourboulis, who is the General Manager of Euronav Ship Management, Mr. George Teriakidis, the Area Manager of DNVGL, and Dragos Rauta, the Technical Director of Intertanko, that will address all of the above issues. Stamatis, you have 15 minutes. Welcome, and the panel is, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Christos, and the organizers. Conscious of the delays of this conference today, I will try to be shorter than the time that you allocated to me, for which I'm thankful. So quickly, I would like to go to my presentation, please, which is about the carbon emissions indicators that we use in shipping. The next slide, please. And I will briefly talk about the objectives of using carbon emission indicators, some definitions, and some challenges that the operators may face when applying these indicators. The next, please. Years ago, for many years, I would say, we were concerned about the fuel consumption on the ships. Recently, and definitely for the future, we are being more concerned about the greenhouse gas emissions. And for addressing this matter, of course, the impact to the environment is related to the absolute total emissions of shipping or whatever else activity. But the carbon intensity emissions indicators are useful to identify the efficiency of a particular trade sector. And in this case, although shipping is the most efficient mode of transport, we still need to reduce our carbon emissions. So these indicators are very useful to identify the efficiency of our ships operations. We can split them in two broad categories, the EDI and the EXI, which are related to ship design characteristics, and to the EOI and AER, which are related to the ship's operating conditions. They are all of importance. The next slide is the definition of the Energy Efficiency Design Index. Also conscious of the time, I will not go in details. The critical element in this equation is the VREF, which is the speed that the ship will make at the sea trials at the 75% of main engine MCR, and this confirmed during the sea trials. And then the attained EEDI is following the ship thereafter. Now, the next indicator, the next slide, please. The energy efficiency existing ship index is a similar formula with the EEDI. However, it relates to ships, to existing ships that were built before the EEDI was a requirement, and it will bring all the ships by this way into some area that regulation may be applied based on these indicators. So the difference of the EXI is that it's not requiring any sea trials and is based on data that are available for the particular ship, mainly the technical file. The next slide, please. The energy efficiency operational indicator probably, to my opinion, is the most representative indicator for the efficiency of particular transportation work, because it calculates the total emissions for a period of time, and they are divided by the actual useful transportation work expressed in cargo ton miles. And the next indicator, which is the annual efficiency ratio, I would say it's similar to the EUI, but a bit more simple, because it on the denominator, instead of the cargo that was transferred and the miles that this cargo was actually transferred, is the summer dead weight of the ship and the total distance traveled over the period that we calculate this indicator. If we go to the next slide, here it is an overview of these four indicators, which we will live with them for some years ahead. The differences is, as I said, the EEDI, EXI are depending on the particular design of the ship. EXI is not requiring sea trials, and is expected, the EXI is expected to be a part of our regulations following the adoption of the next MEPC meeting. On the operational indicators, the EOI is not formally recorded in the IMO DCS, although it's recommended by IMO. It may come into new regulations if the decision is taken for the relevant formula for the carbon intensity index, but I'm sure that Dragos will talk about these matters more clearly. And the AER, which is an indicator that can be calculated based on verified figures reported through the IMO data collection system. If we go to the next slide, this is a recap of what I described already. The operational indexes are influenced, and I would like to highlight this, from parameters and factors that are beyond the control of the ship operator, like the environmental conditions and the commercial trade of the ship. So please, if we go to the next slide, we can see here that these two indicators are not really correlated. So here is a set of ships, Suezmax tankers, which for a period of time have been, we have recorded their AER and their EEOI. And on the upper graph, the classification is based on increasing AER. And you can see that the AEOI doesn't follow a similar pattern. And vice versa. On the lower graph is the opposite. So the ships are classified ranged based on the AEOI. And again, here the AER doesn't follow. So these two operational indicators are quite a challenge, because if you go for the one, you may miss the other. And this is something that we have to deal with. We go to the next slide. This is a similar graph layout for VLCCs. You can see probably here even more pronounced differences in the correlation. And then if we move on to the EXI, the EXI plotted for some ships based on their year of build into the relevant EEDI requirements, which are the graphs, the lines that we see crossing. It's a zoom in the particular area of the dead weight. And here we see that there is a pattern. The younger the ships, the more modern, the better their EXI in general is like this. And if we go to the next slide, we have applied here the 15%, the 20% reduction requirement, which is likely to be regulation for the Suezmax ships, and it is a 2006 built Suezmax tanker. On the bottom graph, we can see the power limit, which is the red line. And on the top is the relevant speed limit. It's an assessment. It's not a formal requirement. It's an indirect impact of the reduction of the maximum power. But the interesting thing is that in the recent years, the ships do not really operate. At least we can see that the operating range does not fall into the area that will be banned with the new requirements. Again, I repeat, this ship built in 2006. The impact is very minimal in terms of the current trading range. We go to the next one. This is a more modern Suezmax. And here the impact is even lesser. So there is an impact on the maximum power allowance, the power limit, but the ships already operate mainly out of this range. And the next slide refers to the VLCC EXI graph. And again, we see here the ships that are older are higher in the chart, and the ships that are younger are more close to the requirements. It's actually with the 15% requirement, reduction requirement, many modern VLCCs will not need to have any power limit other than what is existing by design already. If we go to the next slide, here is a VLCC built in 2012. There is a power limit impact, but again, as I said before, for the Suezmax tankers, the trading pattern is already out of the area that's going to be prohibited. And if we go to a modern VLCC, here there is no need for any additional power limit. This is more or less the overview of the indicators and the challenges that we have to face. In my opinion, as for the ships that we operate in Euronav, which are VLCCs and Suezmax tankers, the EEXI impact for some ships will be nil, as I showed. For some others, it will be some impact, but probably not affecting the already usual trading pattern. The question mark is the operational limitations, the indexes related to operational limits, which is yet to be clarified by the IMO regulations. So thank you very much.
Marty, for your insight. I wonder what is the point of this regulation if the impact is so minimal. Although I have run this in for our vessels, which are Supramax bulk carriers, and there is quite a significant power reduction that needs to be applied with the latest EEXI. The next speaker is Mr. Teriakidis, and he's going to talk to us about the maritime forecast for power, basically, up to 2050. George, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'll try and be as short as possible to save some time from due to all the technical problems we had. If I can have the presentation, please. Thank you. Let's go 2 slides forward, please. One more, please. Thank you. To save some time, the Maritime Forecast is a report that comes out every year for the last 4 years from the NVGL, and basically in there, with a model that we have constructed, we take various factors into account, we create different scenarios and models, and we try to, so to speak, predict what can happen in the years ahead. This becomes even more relevant now in the years that we are going through and discussing the decarbonization of shipping in general. This slide basically shows, and it's worth mentioning since it was discussed earlier, that we are taking in consideration various fuels that are decarbonized, so to speak, from well to propeller. So we're talking about biofuels, some electric fuels, which are from renewable electricity, blue fuels from reformed natural gas and carbon capture, so to speak, and fossil fuels. We need the fossil fuels in order to use them as benchmark and to see how these are playing in the different scenarios. Next slide, please. Thank you. In this slide, we have tried to highlight, I have highlighted with red, apologies, it's too small, that we have 3 basic scenarios. The top scenario is talking that there is no ambition at all, meaning that we don't do anything at all. The second scenario, it says IMO ambition, where basically we simply follow what IMO sets out to do. And the third one is a very, very ambitious scenario, which talks about decarbonization by 2040. Within these three big scenarios, we are throwing in different factors which have to do with regulation, as well as the fleet growth, meaning fleet growth increases a lot or increases not that much, and also a factor which has to do with the energy cost. How much the fuel will be the cost for the fuel. And this gives us basically 30 different scenarios to play with. Next slide, next 2 slides, please. Thank you. The diagram on the left basically shows the vertical axis is the CO2 emissions in total from shipping and how these will progress in the years to come. 2020, 25, and 30 are the years in the future. The different lines one line represents one scenario out of the 30, and the three different colors represent the different scenarios that we have set out. So the blue-ish area is what happens if we have no ambition. The yellowish, if we follow only the IMO ambitions, while the green one is the very, very ambitious, where it's talk about decarbonization 2040. All this nice and well, but what happens with the fuel? Next slide, please. If we take these three scenarios, we see each color represents a different fuel. I don't have the time to go into each different fuel. Apologies. But we see that as the scenarios develop, and by taking and changing each parameter, we have different input of different fuels in the years ahead. Basically, we don't have a clear winner. I think this is something that we knew for today, but it seems that it's going to be the case for the years to come. We do not see that in our way all the way to 2050, we will have one winner that will be able to satisfy all the factors having to do with safety, with price, and with availability. Next, 2 slides, please. One more. And one more, please. So basically, sorry to skip too many slides, is to save some time, unfortunately. So the key questions are, okay, so if we want to decarbonize by 2050 by the targets that are set to us, what are the key barriers that are stopping us to do that? What motivation a ship owner has today or in the years to come? One more slide, please. So are we moving in that direction today? Actually, today, less than 1% of the existing fleet is using some sort of alternative fuels. Without going into detail on how alternative and how decarbonized these fuels are, 6% of the current new buildings are ordered with alternative fuels. And alternative fuels, in this case, the existing fleet, we're talking about methanol, LNG, and battery. These are the ones that we've seen have been used. While the ones on order, they're talking about hydrogen, methanol, LPG, LNG, and battery. Here, I need to stress that we're not talking about only ocean-going fleets. We're talking also about ships that are doing coastal trading. And of course, the scenario for the ships for things like battery might be totally different than the ones for the ocean-going vessel. Interesting to note that hydrogen, although it's been played around in different scenarios, different projects have been seen around the world, in our models and in our predictions, we see that hydrogen will not play a big part as an alternative fuel. However, it will play a part in developing and creating decarbonized fuels in the future. So it will not be the prime fuel itself, but part of the construction of the decarbonized fuels. Next slide, please. So basically, if we take the ship owner's perspective and we look on all the scenarios, we see that I think some of the ship owners in this room will understand, but for everyone else, it becomes clear that currently we do not have mature low carbon fuels, and which are available, which are safe, and which are cost effective today or in the immediate years to come. And when I say available, I mean that we don't have fuels that are totally free of carbon, and the ones that we have are very costly to produce and in small quantities today, again. Next slide, please. In this bar, and I think you will be able to study more carefully once you have the slides, shows basically for 6-7 different factors the maturity for each different fuel. And each different fuel means specific fuels which are represented by the color triangles in the graph. So, for example, for safety, we have hydrogen, which is very low, together with ammonia, where the other fuels are on the right-hand side, which means they're more mature. In this way, we see that you don't have, again, any fuel that is clearly a winner. There are many which are basically need to tackle things like the infrastructure, the availability, the capital expenditure, safety, and so forth. Safety, however, it is the prime concern for many of these fuels. Next slide, please. So, what are the safety challenges? First of all, some of these fuels have some properties which are totally different than the existing conventional fuel oils. So this has to be taken seriously in consideration before we champion any of these fuels. And the additional safety, you need additional safety barriers in order to have an adequate safety level in order to operate with these fuels. Of course, development of regulations and rules from classification societies and other bodies, in my opinion, can be pretty fast, but the adoption and the prototyping and piloting can take some time. Next slide, please. Again, the graph here shows more or less what we saw with the different 7 factors in the previous graph. It simply shows that out of these 5 fuels, the LNG is the one that it's currently on the top of the ladder, not carbon-free, to be noted. However, it's an alternative fuel out of fuel oil. It's on the top of the ladder because it is being used today for ocean-going and deep-sea-going vessels, not to a huge extent, but it is there. The infrastructure is there. It is available in certain spots more than others. However, the point of this graph is that it took about 20 years for LNG to climb the ladder and to reach the point where it is today. So that makes us wonder, can we let the natural flow of things take care of the other fuels maturing the way LNG did, or we need some more forceful intervention by other stakeholders beyond ship owners and ship managers? One more slide, please. Basically, we have to consider before we do anything, and that's the whole industry, that we should be using now as intermediate fuel available fuels that in the future can be combined or can be are compatible in terms of storage, in terms of availability with others. So the LNG is compatible, for example, with bio-LNG or synthetic LNG, hopefully in the future, if we are able to do it in a cost-effective manner, or even hydrogen, which means that basically we should be constructing infrastructure for one fuel today, which is not ideal, but can be used for other fuels in the years to come, which means that it will save us time from creating new infrastructure and new storage and probably even new engines. 2 more slides and we've reached the last slide. Thank you. So summing up and closing from my part is basically 3 points that definitely within the next decade, we need to have these new generation carbon fuels. Otherwise, we will have serious delays in reaching the targets that are set out for us. In order to drive the development of these new fuels, we need all stakeholders to chip in and to basically assist in order to develop these fuels in a manner that they will be carbon-free from well to propeller. And that is easier said than done, unfortunately, as per today, that is. And the third and last point, the managing of decarbonization risks. This is managing risks not only in terms of safety, but also in terms of investment costs. It is not, and I think many know that it's far from easy to say which option today will be safe in a financial, but also in a safety to the environment and to the people in the years to come. One more slide, and with the last slide, I would like to thank you for your attention. Apologies for being fast. You will be able to get the slides, and for any questions, I would be more than happy to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George. It was enlightening and frightening because there are so many fuels to choose from that it gives everybody a very big headache. The floor is now to Dragos Rauta. Dragos, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Christos, and Kalispera to everyone. Thank you also to Newsfront and Naftiliaki for inviting us. My task of today, could you put my slides, please? The task given today to me was to talk about the EEXI factor alone. So, well, I will, at the end, I will spend a minute on CIIs and where we are there. Next slide, please. So everyone is familiar with the target IMO initial strategy targets for different years, and that those ambitions have been grouped into the short-term measures, medium and long-term, which is the total decarbonization. And of course, there will be it's planned to have a pace enforcement of this regulation. Next one, please. Next slide. Okay. So the priority at the moment in IMO is obviously to deal with the short-term measures that will assist shipping to get to meet the 2030 target. So there is an IMO working group that deals with this, and there are intensive negotiations and developments, even despite this COVID-19. And in a couple of weeks, as people alluded, Marine Environmental Protection Committee of IMO is going to be invited to approve a set of amendments to MARPOL Annex 6 on the short-term measures, legal text, and there will be two. There are proposed two parallel factors. One is the technical one, as they call it, is the existing ship's energy efficiency existing ship indicator, and the other one operational, which is an enhancement of the ship energy efficiency management plan by using carbon intensity indicators as a metric for measurements. Next slide, please. So what is the concept of all this is that we've called the EEDI regulation for new ships, but when IMO strategy has been adopted in 2016, it was also decided that there will be a need for additional operational measures on all ships. So the EEXI concept was proposed, and it does actually talk about operation restriction. And the proposal as such, it's leaves up to the owner how he decides or she decides to meet it. Next slide, please. And what is the philosophy behind it? It's actually because Christos asked, what's the point? The point is that if in 2007 and 8 ships are running 75, 80% of MCRs and so on, since then, more or less, let's say an average, probably they run at 50% MCRs. So the EEXI was suggested to make mandatory the slow steaming that we have exercised for many, many, many years. And so irrespective to the market demands in the future, there are very few new buildings out there. So irrespective to the new market demands, the ships will not be allowed to speed up or be limited to a certain level of speed. The easiest, although there is no prescriptive way of meeting EEXI by the rules, the easiest suggested way of doing it is to impose a power limit either on the main engine or the shaft. And that's considered as being the easiest way to implement, verify, comply with, and certify with, of course. And there is a provision, there will be a provision of power reserve provision, as they call it, that ships, when they need more power, they can bypass the limitation. EEXI, as defined, is very similar to EEDI, and the required values will be, representing a percentage reduction from the EEDI baseline, phase 0. So I put, for our members, I put a little table with tankers only, and you will see the required reduction from the baseline. EEDI formula, Stamatis was alluding to that the EEXI formula is very similar to EEDI and is based on most of the data which you need are already in a ship's technical file. Next slide, please. Yeah, so how it goes, because it's a iterative calculation and it's a kind of a reverse one. the ships will calculate an engine power limit, of which value leads us to an operational speed that then corresponds to a fuel consumption, which will keep the carbon intensity to a required level. The calculation as such is going to be explained into a set of IMO guidelines, and part of the requirements will be that each ship will have its own EEXI technical file on which the calculation methodology is going to be presented. If everything goes as planned, the verification of the EEXI or compliance with EEXI will be at the first intermediate or first renewal survey, whichever comes first on or after January 1st, 2023. And we have an EEXI calculator that we circulated to members to do their own assessments. Next slide, please. One of the advantages as presented by Japan, who proposed that, and as just verified also through the impact assessment, is that with EEXI, that if the ship is more efficient by nature, so it will be an incentive. EEXI will be an incentive as compared with some initial proposals to have a complete speed limit, maximum speed limit for every single ship. Next slide, please. There is going to be a review clause, and that's going to be probably required to be completed by January 1st, 2026. And it will be an assessment of the efficiency, efficacy of the measures. What they call some of the EU countries, member states like Denmark, France, Germany, and so on, that are not very happy with EEXI only. What they call it is, so maybe this is EEXI phase 1. Although it's not in the rules or the proposed rule at the moment to have a phase 1 or phase 2 EEXI requirement, you never know through this review clause. Next one, please. And this is just to explain to you the amount of work ahead of IMO. There are 7 new sets of guidelines, new guidelines to be developed. And there is another 4 existing ones which need to be updated to, to kind of cover up for everything on this new regulation. Next one, please. And I promise this is the last one. Well, the next steps at IMO, it's the November meeting now in a couple of weeks. If they do approve the proposed amendments, then will be the IMO Secretary General will circulate this for final adoption, and that is by IMO rules, it needs a 6-month circulation time during which the parties to MARPOL Annex 6 may agree or disagree with, express their own views on that. And if that happens in the next MAPC, which probably we expect to be sometime in May next year, these amendments will be finally approved, and then they could become mandatory or applicable in 1st of January 2023. Now, there is a lot of intersessional activity expected there. We do not have, and I promise I'll say a couple of words about CIIs. These amendments do not clearly define what is a carbon intensity indicator, except that there is some sort of CO2 emissions over the transport work. And that's what is a problem with CII, as Stamatis alluded to, because being reported to the transport work, it's a carbon intensity metric for the transport activity, not for the ship one. And the CII, any way you put them, particularly EEOI, is has three main factors. Number one is the ship efficiency, of course. Number two is the prevailing environmental condition of the voyages over the year for every ship, a single ship. And number three are the commercial elements like the payload distribution, how much cargo usage of your cargo capacities put there. So, and the allocation distribution. For tankers particularly, it's very interesting, what's the play between the frequency and the length of the ballast and laden voyages. The other CII is AER. That's kind of, you could dismiss it from the very beginning because actually the AER is better, comes better from ballast voyages than the laden voyages. So that's the CII. We have a couple of clarification concerning our members as well, how we do with the EPL for the shuttle tanker, dynamic propulsion shuttle tankers, because they do use quite a lot of fuel and power at the offshore location, particularly in North Sea. And then we have another discrepancy or probably problem with the chemical tankers, parcel tankers particularly, because today they are under the EEDI and under the IMO data collection system. They are put together with product tankers and oil tankers. But their pattern of fuel consumption is completely different from regular product tankers. So it's a lot of work to be done. We, as Intertanko, we hope that these rules are enforceable by 1st of January 2023, only for one reason, because the challenges ahead of us for 2050 are very high, and then we need a lot of energy and time to spend on these issues rather than a small discrepancy of views at IMO, which are mostly political, between the CIIs and what it should be, how they should be applied. With that, thank you very much, and I wait for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Dragos. Listening to all of you gentlemen, a question has sprung to my mind. If we make a quick flashback from the year 2000 and till now, ship owners have spent for ballast treatment and scrubbers and these type of things billions upon billions of dollars. And to my mind, this is partly wasted money, and definitely it has come very late. I mean, it has never been the situation that whatever has been decided, it was done in time. Now, we hear from George Teriakidis this huge variety of fuels that will be available and eligible to become fuels of the future for ships. And my question to you all is, would it be possible to design the ships or to promote the design of ships in such a manner that they could eventually accommodate in the course of their lifetime a variety of fuels and without having either to scrap the ship, and this clearly is not something that can be done after 2 or 5 or even 10 years of the lifetime of a ship, and still promote this eco-friendliness and aim towards zero carbon emissions in the course of the ship's lifetime. Thank you. Yes, George. Stamatis. Yeah, George first.
Thank you. Yes, you're right. Since 2000, this is a situation that all ship owners and managers are faced. The idea of designing a ship that will be able to be compatible with all these fuels is something that everybody is playing with, and it's something that probably we will be seeing in the future as a commonplace, meaning a ship of multiple fuels rather than what we had up until today, one fuel, recently 2 fuels. However, if we look at it today that we are discussing the matter, this this idea from a technical point of view is feasible in quote unquote until they come out. But from a financial point of view, it's a very big question mark, because we cannot consider the ship is, if a ship is technically feasible to be built, it can be built. There is also the economical financial matter, which is an issue. And regarding the fuels, the variety of the fuels is still a problem. We are, in my opinion, at a very uncomfortable place in the timeline where we are waiting for something to come out. Nothing has come out yet which can be taken up, and unfortunately the industry is still with a question mark on what can I order that will last 15 years and my ship will still be competitive financially as well as technically.
And this answer does not exist, and I'm afraid it will not be here for a long time. Stamati.
Yes, I wanted to agree with what has been said. It's a difficult question, but it is the question now. And a lot of energy is being, I believe, put from many organizations and companies to see what to do. From one way, somebody could say that this LNG fueled ships is the midpoint to the transition. There are also other opinions to that. It is obvious that the variety of the future fuels options do not help for a future-proof ship design. You need to take some assumptions, you need to take some decisions, take some risks. And I fully agree also with what George said, that even technically, if you can take your decisions, you need to foresee what's going to be the market, the environment, the bunkering possibilities for the future fuels and so on. It is not easy. I just want to say that Euronav is part of a coalition which is called Getting to Zero Coalition, with many different stakeholders taking part, not only ship owners, but from all sections, all parts of the industry, including financial institutions, associations, regulatory bodies, etc., for exploring how a ship could be commercially viable in 2030 to be built for zero carbon emissions. So there are a lot of questions, not many answers yet, but from one point of view, this makes shipping very fascinating.
Okay, thank you, Stamati. Dragos, you have your comment?
Yeah. Well, you ask, waste of money. So ballast water treatment system, I don't, promote them, but it's not that much to do with the decarbonization, if the proper fuel is going to be used. Scrubbers, if you get the payback, you just throw them out and so on.
My point was that it was not done in time.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't matter if we agree or not, but it was done too late.
There are obvious reasons why all this, and it's basically the same thing. You cannot anticipate what is popular and not popular, and you'll see all this push and quiet from regulators and environmental groups on scrubbers, and immediately when people install the scrubbers, started this campaign on prohibiting them. Now, for the future, well, you may be aware that all ship owners associations all together went to IMO to propose this International Maritime Research Board concept, that ships collectively could collect money, $2 per on a fuel purchase, to create this fund which sits outside IMO, is not controlled by government, is not a market-based measure, but it's something that people with high experience and knowledge could select and help with this money to accelerate development of what probably will be the best solutions, the most appropriate solution for shipping. What a ship owner can do, I don't know. I'm not a ship owner, but I guess you, like many other in the past, you make a ship, you build a new ship ready for next fill. I can fantasize. I don't know exactly how much LPG is out there, but you can have it a LPG fuel, and from that, I think maybe it's not impossible or so difficult 10, 15 years ago to, if you choose to do so, to change it to use ammonia and so on. So there are all kind of, but that's my speculative mind. When it comes to fuel and all this green and brown fuels and so on, nobody is mentioned too much about pay attention to the new nuclear power concept, which is molten salt reactors. And I'm not talking now to put them on board the ship, although there are projects for that as well. It's a big company in the United States with the biggest shareholder called Bill Gates. And these molten salt reactors are not larger than a main engine of a ship. And they are very much safer than the traditional ones. Why I mention that is that this could be even not very expensive to build in one place and move around. And that might be the energy, the source of energy at land, which could create our carbon neutral fuels in the future. So, what it remains to us to see how we could make such a selection in the future, and see how we adapt these new fuels, carbon neutral fuels, to be safely and efficiently and affordable used on board the ships. I'm an old man, but I'm an optimist, Mr. Chairman. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I say something?
Yes, sure.
Actually, we have just 5 minutes left, so let's try to resume. I think it's the most interesting panel we had today. And actually, I would like to transfer one of the questions we had at the first panel. So it's comes like the critical dilemma of our time, like the critical uncertainty of our time is whether the regulations that we have now in front of us, and this is the EEXI and the Carbon Intensity Index, whether this regulation will affect ships' lifetime, whether a ship will have the same 20 years lifetime as they have today, or will change. Stamatis just before said that at least the initial application of EEXI will not affect our ships and will not affect the normal operation. Then you made a comment and you said that then what is the point if we do not change our normal operation, we will not have any benefit to the environment. And in the first panel, Stavros Hadjigrigori said that definitely some ships will have a shorter life than the others. So finally, what is your opinion on that? We're going to have ships that will be obsolete in 10 and 15 years from now or not?
Okay, if who's going to start? Stamatis.
You can start, actually. You can share your thoughts with us.
My opinion is that this will depend on what is the replacement option. If in the next 10 or 15 years we have ships that are substantially, and when I say substantially, I mean substantially, better than the existing ones, then the answer is yes.
So you believe that it will be always owner's option to replace the ship, and it is not a regulatory, it's not a mandatory rule.
I think it's going to be if ships are available in the market that are significantly better to the present ones, yes, we will scrap the ships, or and this was the point that I was trying to make earlier on, we should try to future-proof the ships. If you remember, I think quite a few of us will remember the T2 tankers that Niarchos had. And what he was doing was that he was re-engineering by cutting a piece of the engine room and fitting a new engine room. So if we could dream of a ship that could have an engine room, or the propulsion part or the powering part was easy to replace, this would mean that we could future-proof the ship, and we could just cut up and replace the thing that produced power. And if the remaining of the ship was electric, then we would just hook up the new power source to the existing electricity consuming platform, and we would have a new ship, as far as regulations are concerned. It's an idea. Food for thought.
Σταμάτης Χατζός, some thoughts.
Yeah, just to say that the ships are obsolete based on business decisions and regulations, of course. But in the recent years, we see that the ships are becoming obsolete because of the market situation, especially for the tankers. We see that the lifetime of the tankers, especially for international trade, is limited, less than the design life of the ship. So I believe that it's going to be in the future also a business decision. And of course, in order to promote the alternative fuels, I don't see any other way rather than a carbon tax levy at some point to close the gap on the cost between the alternative fuels and the existing fuels.
If I may balance to give you the right perspective, last IMO GHG study, published now in July, established that from 2008 to 2018, international shipping globally has reduced their carbon intensity if they EEOI by 32% close to, and if they consider AER by 29%. So in 10 years, there was like 30% reduction. We have another 10 years to go from here to 2030, where the target in average 40% carbon intensity reduction. Now, there will be a shift of generation during these 10 years. So it will be more phase 2 EEDI, phase 2 and phase 3 ships coming in, and pre-EEDI ships getting out. So it's not so bad. It looks okay, optimistic in a way. Now, if the CII...
Close with the optimistic comment.
If the CII, well, I think it's a factual thing, and the ships will not be allowed to speed up any longer, and so on and so on. But if you look to the CII, the proponents of CII, they want every single ship by 2030 to have 40% lower carbon intensity. Then if that becomes the norm into the IMO regulations, that will create a lot of victims. So it's no doubt about that. So it very much depends, I know the answer in a year or so. It very much depends on the level of the requirements. And shipping as a whole, not as a company, shipping as a whole, it continues to be the supply of transportation, major supply of transportation, for the entire world. So of course there will be solutions, and somebody will pay for it.
Okay, I think that we ran out of time. I have to thank all of you, and I have to thank also the previous panelists. I have to thank the organizers. I believe that it was a very successful conference. Even if we had these technical problems, that it's something that it should be expected when you have so many people attending and it is online. Something maybe have some delay. But we heard very valid opinions, and I think that we will think about this, and it will be discussed again in the days ahead of us. Thank you very much, and take care. Please stay safe now these difficult days with the pandemic. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
ABS is a leading global provider of classification and technical advisory services to the marine and offshore industries. ABS is committed to setting standards for safety and excellence in design and construction. Focused on safe and practical application of advanced technologies and digital solutions, ABS with industry and clients works together to develop accurate and cost-effective compliance, optimized performance and operational efficiency for marine and offshore assets. We have developed an unparalleled global network of sustainability expertise with centers of excellence located in key maritime cities around the world: Athens, Houston, Copenhagen, and Singapore. ABS is partnering with leading industry players in a range of joint initiatives designed to drive forward key areas of research, such as vessel design, future fuels, digital technologies, and decarbonization pathways.
The COVID-19 pandemic is eliciting changes in the pace of shipping industry. The take-up of digital technologies is accelerating, while the journey to a decarbonized 2050 remains uncertain. Greek shipping, as always, plays a pivotal role moving the industry forward, and we, at Lloyd's Register, remain committed to our Greek partners, understanding their needs and offering our experienced hand that will help them to navigate the changing landscape safely and sustainably.
We are a company of maritime experts, established in 1977, driven by knowledge, resources, and passion. We deliver technical excellence and environmental protection to the maritime industry. With over 40 years' experience and a workforce of highly trained and experienced technicians, commercial and operational experts, we look into the future. Innovation merged with experience is what makes the difference. Finding real-world solutions to everyday challenges. We are an old company with the youngest ideas. We are Maritech.
Ocean King is one of the leading technical and commercial marine groups in Greece, established 31 years ago in 1989 in Piraeus, Greece. The last few years, shipping is undergoing very many challenges with international regulations for the environment, safety, fuel, and so on. Ocean King has adapted its operations always to follow the trends of the market and the needs, and we are very much aware of the environmental footprint of all our technologies that we are promoting. The COVID pandemic has shown us that we have to do things differently, and shipping is not an exception if we want to contribute as an industry to the environmental sustainability. Our company, which combines technical talent and cooperates with the best companies in the world, we are committed with our values for the environment to continue to play an active role in the sustainability of the Greek shipping.
ABS is a leading global provider of classification and technical advisory services to the marine and offshore industries. ABS is committed to setting standards for safety and excellence in design and construction. Focused on safe and practical application of advanced technologies and digital solutions, ABS with industry and clients works together to develop accurate and cost-effective compliance, optimized performance and operational efficiency for marine and offshore assets. We have developed an unparalleled global network of sustainability expertise with centers of excellence located in key maritime cities around the world: Athens, Houston, Copenhagen, and Singapore. ABS is partnering with leading industry players in a range of joint initiatives designed to drive forward key areas of research such as vessel design, future fuels, digital technologies, and decarbonization pathways.
The COVID-19 pandemic is eliciting changes in the pace of shipping industry. The take-up of digital technologies is accelerating, while the journey to a decarbonized 2050 remains uncertain. Greek shipping, as always, plays a pivotal role moving the industry forward, and we, at Lloyd's Register, remain committed to our Greek partners, understanding their needs and offering our experienced hand that will help them to navigate the changing landscape safely and sustainably.
We are a company of maritime experts, established in 1977, driven by knowledge, resources, and passion. We deliver technical excellence and environmental protection to the maritime industry. With over 40 years' experience and a workforce of highly trained and experienced technicians, commercial and operational experts, we look into the future. Innovation merged with experience is what makes the difference. Finding real-world solutions to everyday challenges. We are an old company with the youngest ideas. We are Maritech.
Ocean King is one of the leading technical and commercial marine groups in Greece, established 31 years ago in 1989 in Piraeus, Greece. The last few years, shipping is undergoing very many challenges with international regulations for the environment, safety, fuel, and so on. Ocean King has adapted its operations always to follow the trends of the market and the needs, and we are very much aware of the environmental footprint of all our technologies that we are promoting. The COVID pandemic has shown us that we have to do things differently, and shipping is not an exception if we want to contribute as an industry to the environmental sustainability. Our company, which combines technical talent and cooperates with the best companies in the world, we are committed with our values for the environment to continue to play an active role in the sustainability of the Greek shipping.
ABS is a leading global provider of classification and technical advisory services to the marine and offshore industries. ABS is committed to setting standards for safety and excellence in design and construction. Focused on safe and practical application of advanced technologies and digital solutions, ABS with industry and clients works together to develop accurate and cost-effective compliance, optimized performance and operational efficiency for marine and offshore assets. We have developed an unparalleled global network of sustainability expertise with centers of excellence located in key maritime cities around the world: Athens, Houston, Copenhagen, and Singapore. ABS is partnering with leading industry players in a range of joint initiatives designed to drive forward key areas of research, such as vessel design, future fuels, digital technologies, and decarbonization pathways.
The COVID-19 pandemic is eliciting changes in the pace of shipping industry. The take-up of digital technologies is accelerating, while the journey to a decarbonized 2050 remains uncertain. Greek shipping, as always, plays a pivotal role moving the industry forward, and we, at Lloyd's Register, remain committed to our Greek partners, understanding their needs and offering our experienced hand that will help them to navigate the changing landscape safely and sustainably.
We are a company of maritime experts, established in 1977, driven by knowledge, resources, and passion. We deliver technical excellence and environmental protection to the maritime industry. With over 40 years' experience and a workforce of highly trained and experienced technicians, commercial